12:30, so I would like to call the commission to the February the 13th, 2023 Winston-Salem Forsyth County Commission to order. And at this time, we'll have roll call.
Chair Wesley Curtis,
President.
Vice Chair Chris Parker,
Present.
Commissioner Simpson Brown,
Present.
Commissioner Harold Eustache, Commissioner Tom Griffin,
Here.
Commissioner Yvonne Hines, Commissioner Hugh Jernigan,
Here.
Commissioner Dwayne Long,
Here.
Commissioner Calvin McRae,
Here.
Commissioner Charles Wilson,
Here.
Commissioner Alan Young.
I'm present.
All right, thank you for roll call. At this time, I guess I'll turn it over to Courtney for agenda item.
Okay.
discussion.
Good afternoon, Commission. We'll start and I'll share my screen. Okay, first, as normal, welcome and announcement. And then we have Chantel McClam here. She's our purchasing director. She's going to give us a purchasing policy overview. And then we'll go through our normal updates, treatment plan updates, field operations, solid waste, and then financial updates. And then we will finish with discussing our 8 agenda items. So just 88 departmental vacancies. So we're still up there. But not because we're not trying everything that we can to bring that number down. We attended 2 recruitment, we had staff attend 2 recruitment events last week, one at NC State and then the other one at UNC Charlotte. We also are trying to partner with the local colleges in our area. We've had conversations with UNC Charlotte, we've had conversations with Wake Forest, reaching out to A&T to try to see what partnership we can have with those universities to get students interested when they're in college in working for local government. And we're in the process right now of hiring our summer interns. So again, hopefully getting students interested in what we do, and then hopefully we'll make a career.
For the vacancies that come across the board.
Yeah. So we have they're mostly in field operations, so it's equipment operators, which would not lend to the college partnership. But we also are partnering with Goodwill and Forsyth Tech, and looking at new programs for CDL training and things of that nature. So mostly in operations, but we do have engineering vacancies.
That's your colleges and internships.
Correct.
How many engineering?
3.
Does that count solid waste? Okay, my 4.
You got 1 or 2 in solid waste, right?
Engineering positions 1.
So it would be 4.
4
Out of how many? Yeah. Out of
How many engineers? I mean,
8 or 9. Oh, that's like the CIP group, for example. There are 4 engineers and 2 of them are vacant. And then we have an engineering position at UFO that is vacant. It's been vacant for a while.
And all of those are 4-year degree required.
All require a 4-year degree. 2 of them require PE.
Okay.
So what do the wage comparison studies say about all these openings, like especially for the CDLs?
So I think there's 2 things there. One, and I was talking to Mr. Curtis about this a little bit before the meeting. When we look at our peers, our High Points, our Greensboros, our Guilford counties, the folks that we compete with, I don't know that we're greatly out of whack in terms of salary comparisons there. Where we're getting beat up pretty bad is the private sector, and what private companies and those folks can pay those PEs and those engineers that come out of school. They're paying them substantially more than we can pay. And the same thing on the equipment operator side, the flat irons, the Blythes, the folks like that, that's who's scooping up all the equipment operators. And we're having a lot of the same challenges that our peers in High Point and Greensboro are having there. So on the public sector side, I think we're reasonably competitive there. We did a lot of things last year citywide to get more competitive. It's the private sector where we're losing touch there.
So it's our peers amongst other counties are having similar vacancy issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know if you've got any kind of data there, but I ran into John Ryan in CDOT last week, and he said the same thing, that at the state level, they're having the same thing at Division 9 office in terms of attracting talent, both on the field side, on the equipment operator, and on the professional side, on the engineering staff. So it's all the way around.
That's right.
And the feedback is good at college campuses, though. It's just more so the private sector just is able to pay so much
Right.
better.
Right. We had a lot of interest in our summer internships last week at the career fair. So a lot of students not ready to enter the working, workforce yet permanently, but looking at internships. So if we can just get to those students and get them interested and excited about working for local government, hopefully that will help. They want to make it a career.
Do we pay them during this interview?
Yes, we do.
So
Yes. Yes.
That's certainly a challenge.
So the utility also, we help sponsor Forsyth Creek Week, which is coming up. And there's going to be a tour at our Thomas Water Treatment Plant on March 22nd. And then there's a closing day jamboree on March 26th. But just to let you know that we do sponsor that event. We have a new member orientation from Mr. McCray on this Thursday from 9 to 12. I'm excited to show him around all of our facilities, not all of them, but some of them. And just a reminder that we have our upcoming budget workshops. We're going to present the capital budget on March 29th at 10:30, and then we will be presenting the operating budget and rate recommendation on April 21st, starting at 10.
Anybody's welcome to the orientation.
Yes.
Just need to let you
But
know.
we just need to let me know because we'll have to advertise it as a public meeting if I have so many. Yes, it's a quorum. It's basically any quorum of the full body or any quorum of any committee.
Okay.
So if you're interested in participating, which is definitely would love to have you, just let me know.
With plenty of.
Yes, like by the end of the day. This is Thursday.
That's right.
I think those require 48 hour notice.
Yeah.
So we have time. I just need.
And,
Also want to acknowledge, I have a couple of staff members in the room that aren't typically here. We have Ninette Diggs, who's sitting in the back. She's our financial analyst. She's sitting in just to review to see what the commission does. And then Sharon Strauss is a GIS technician. She's right here. And then Indira Jana Laganda, yes, is right here. And she's one of our IS analysts, and she's also in our GIS group. So we're glad to have them today so they can hear and see what's going on. Wanted to just update you on wholesale customers. We talk about our wholesale customers, but just as a reminder, we have several customers, either water wholesale customers or sewer. And that basically means that it's any system that has either a water or sewer system that we provide services to. So on the water side, we provide them stored and treated water, but we do not provide maintenance or billing or customer service for that entity's water system. And then similarly on the sewer side, there's a customer that has a system, but we treat the water for them, but we do not provide any maintenance, billing, or customer service for that entity's system. So these are the list of the water. So Davidson Water is a wholesale customer, City of Greensboro, Stokes County, Stokesdale, Yakin County. Those are all water wholesale customers. And then sewer wholesale customers that we have are Davidson County, Davie County, and City of King.
But we treat the water from one of those.
So we treat the wastewater on those lower three.
The lower three.
Yep,
Okay.
for the sewer. And then we provide treated water to those upper five, the first five.
And is King putting in their own sewer system?
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to remind you about our wholesale customers, because we do have a situation where King is interested in building their own wastewater treatment plant. And they are or have been our second largest sewer customer in our system. They account for about 2% of the wastewater that we treat. So they're a significant customer of ours. But they want to build their own treatment facility, and the Department of Environmental Quality is refusing to issue them a new permit. a new discharge permit, the DEQ argues that the Clean Water Act prevents them from issuing a permit to a new source discharger because they're in impaired waters and we don't have nutrient limits in our body of waters. So King is challenging DEQ's refusal to issue this permit. So I just want to make you aware that this is going on in the background. In case, in case it comes up in the paper or anything like that, that way you would know what's going on
What is
here.
the reasoning for wanting to?
I'm sorry.
For King taking it in-house.
I think, I can't say for sure, but I think they're just looking at options of how they would want to serve their customers.
They think they can do it for less?
No way, yeah.
I think that they think
They
that,
think do it for
right.
less. Now, where would the proposed treatment plant, is that like above our water?
Yes, it would be.
That's the issue.
Okay,
Yes.
Not too far from the Swan intake.
that's not nice.
We don't know a whole lot of details. And Courtney's kind of brought this up as I guess a potential lawsuit that's out there. A lot of detailed information about it, I guess, that we can share, that we know about. So, but we thought it was very important to let everybody know that's going out there, so if it comes up in the paper, you're aware, at least you're aware of what it is.
Exactly.
One of the things we're going to try to do, we'll talk more about this too, is that be more aware for the commission, to be more aware of all of our entities around us and the relationships are there. If they're thinking something long term, we kind of stay ahead of all those kind of issues. Yeah, Tom.
We got sewer from Davie County. Where is that? We hadn't heard anything about that long. Is this a bad time to do that or?
No, I think our partnership with Davie County is going well. We finished the project out there and they're sending us, their wastewater through the pump station that they have on their side of the Yaqui River. So, 5-6 years ago, Davie County was going through the same process as King, where they were trying to look at all their options. Do we want to build our own plant? Do we want to continue sending our wastewater to Winston-Salem for Forsyth County Utilities to treat? And ultimately, after they did the analysis, they determined it was more cost effective to stay a customer of ours, and we negotiated a new rate with Davie County to make that happen. So,
Did anything ever happen with the pump station out there, Clemens? One in the business park that we put in?
So it's built and it's there.
It enlarged. We never did make a deal with Clemens, did we?
No. But Davie's flow comes through that lift station and then to our treatment plant from there.
I want to welcome Commissioner Hines she's online. Thank you. Been here. Good. So everybody aware. Thanks.
Brings up, do you have any thoughts about you wholesale customers for water?
New wholesale customers?
Or potential expansion?
Yes, we actually have a meeting Friday with Oak Ridge. So that's a potential new customer.
They're looking at Greensboro as well.
Yeah, they're I'm sure going through the process, trying to evaluate all the different options and look at all the alternatives. And obviously we're one of the alternatives that they want to consider. And so to provide drinking water. So I'll update you, I guess we can keep you up to date on that. But there's been a lot of our wholesale customers are asking us lately to look at their agreements for increased capacity. I know Stokes Sales asked for increased capacity. Stokes County bill has asked for increased capacity. I think Davidson County has too. I think there's a lot of growth in our area as well as a lot of the surrounding areas. So they're trying to plan for that growth. And then we, of course, look at our models and, make sure that we can handle all those requests or any of those requests. And then they would come before the board before anything is approved. Any agreement revisions would come before the board.
And we typically standardize those contracts, and most of them, for a fair amount of them, expire 2030, so we're going ahead and extending them out to 2050. As well as adding some standard language that we have in all of them about water quality, pumping responsibilities. If pressure is inadequate, that responsibility is on them.
Speaking of treatment capacity, are you gonna take Calvin to Nielsen?
I was gonna take him to Thomas.
Is it, I guess at some point, is it possible that we can arrange something for whoever wants to go to Nielsen? Because I'd like to go out, if I did some construction, I don't want to go out there by myself. And so I think it would be cool to go out and see what's going on.
So absolutely, anybody can come at any time, but now we do have to be careful with, the construction site and making sure that you meet, if we're in construction areas, hard hats, steel toe, safety vests and all that stuff. The chair and I have talked about having a meeting out there, and originally we were going to try to have a meeting out there this spring, but it's not suitable right now for a meeting, but maybe in the fall. I've talked to Bill. We think potentially we could have something in the fall, or maybe spring.
Well, maybe just a big update at some point.
Yes.
Soon to give us an update on what's going on with the plant, where it is, and how far behind or ahead we are.
We can do that.
Yeah, we can do that.
Anything else? Okay, I'm gonna switch. Chantel, I'm gonna let you go and switch over to your slide. I think there's fine.
Purchasing.
Can you see them?
I think so.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Chair Curtis and Commissioners. As Courtney said, my name is Chantel McClam. I am the City County Purchasing Director. So I'm going to take a few minutes today just to give you an update, a review of how we serve you. So I have a 7-member team. We've got 4 buyers, including myself, and 3 support staff. Go ahead, Courtney, I'll tell you a little bit more about what they do. Of course, in my role, I oversee the overall purchasing process, and I make sure that we are purchasing goods and services in construction and completing contracts in accordance with not just North Carolina state statute, but that we're also following city policy and procedures and federal procurement rules and regulations. Tawana Gates is my senior buyer. She is the one, she typically handles formal and informal bids for tangible items. So she's the one that's buying your uniforms, your meter boxes, pipe fittings. She's buying those type of things for you. Darren Redfield, he's our buyer construction specialist. So he handles all of your construction bids, and he also handles those ever so hard chemical bids that we have to put out. Russell Fry, he, along with myself, we do most of the services, most of the service bids. So he's putting those things out for any type of maintenance contracts, mowing, repair and service contracts. That's basically what we're doing. I do a lot of the IT software type of service bids. And then our support staff, we've got Steve Withridge, who is, he's basically our reporting guru. He handles surplus goods, but he also makes sure that we've got our monthly reports. He handles reporting construction project data to Hub, which is a huge undertaking. And he also keeps us on track with any of our renewable, extendable type contracts. Jennifer Hayden does our fuel orders. That's a daily process that she has to go through. She also handles change orders, encumbrance adjustments, and she routes contracts for us. And then Peggy Hale handles all of our P-card processes. So that's an undertaking in itself. It's a daily process for Peggy. So let's go on. This is just a list, not all encompassing, of the types of goods and services in construction that we purchase for you all. So purchasing responsibilities, of course, you know, our team services, City of Winston-Salem, City County Utilities. We also service Forsyth County and Winston Transit Authority. So we got a lot going on for the 7 of us. Our goal is to always ensure that we are using public funds wisely, prudently. We are making sure we're like safeguarding the purchasing process to ensure that there's no fraud, that the process is fair and it's open. We are making sure contracts are awarded consistent with law. And it gives the citizens assurance that you've got a body that is overseeing and ensuring that public procurement procedures are being followed. We also want to make sure this is a competitive process, and we want to make sure this is open to everybody in the community, especially small businesses and minority and women-owned enterprises. And to ensure that the public has access to contracting.
Yeah, question.
Sure.
The women and minority piece of that contracting, we measure that, I'm assuming.
We do measure it. There are several different areas, and I'll talk a little bit more too when we get into our thresholds, but we are making sure that we are advertising and getting information out to minority and women-owned businesses.
And we're able to hit our targets right now.
Yes, yes. So as I stated earlier, we have to make sure that we are following North Carolina general statutes, that we are following city and county policy and procedures, federal regulations, and that we're prepared if we are ever audited in any kind of way. This is what we do for you all. We prepare project schedules. That's mostly in the construction when there's a project schedule needed. We advertise, and then we do direct email solicitations to vendors. We serve as a primary source so that the project manager is not bombarded with questions and how do I do this, how do I do that? So we ensure that our information is in there so they can contact us directly with those questions. We accept all of the bids in so that we are maintaining a fair process. We're accepting the bids in, we're reviewing them to make sure that they're responsive before they even get to the project manager and the valuation team. As needed, we will prepare the city council and utility commission and Forsyth County agenda items for the governing board's consideration. And then as needed as well, we will process contract documents. And we do have a database where we keep purchasing records and vendor information. So these are kind of our threshold. These are the state required thresholds at a informal bidding level for purchases. So when we say purchases, we're talking apparatus, supplies, materials, equipment. The state requires us to do an informal bidding process at $30,000 up to $90,000 and formal above $90,000. The state also says that when it comes to purchasing requirements, that we have to follow the most stringent rule, the most strict rule. And so the city's rule is a little bit stricter. The state says $30,000, but we say $20,000. So at $20,000 level, we have an informal bidding process.
When's the last time that was changed?
It's been years. Pre-me. Pre-me. But we like the range. We like that $20,000 range to make sure that it's a fair process at that level. From 1,000 to 19,000, we're still making sure there's a fair process because we're requiring them to get quotes from varying vendors. But at that $20,000 range, we're taking responsibility for ensuring that we are advertising appropriately and it's competitive.
You might want to spend just another second on the difference between informal and formal bids.
Okay.
And I know we talked about dollar threshold, I guess, to think that, but now say if it's $30,000 and we've got an informal bid, now what's the process? What are some things we can do? And you've got some checklists there, but
okay.
Just right.
So for informal, at that range level, we're advertising, we are receiving, and we're electronic advertising mostly. We are receiving bids, they're still sealed. We're just getting them in an email box that is just for bids only, and we're not opening them until the date of the bid opening. The difference between the formal and the informal and the formal is we have to have a public bid opening for formal. So we state it and we say where you can come to review the bids, but for in the formal process, however, they don't have to come. They can just electronically send their bid and then request a bid tab at a later date. But our process for advertising is typically the same, formal, informal. We want to make sure that it stays out long enough so that it's competitive and that we can get enough feedback or have enough time for bidders to see the advertisement and to respond. And so we typically leave it out there 7 to 10 days. Construction and repair, there's a little bit different threshold. Our threshold is still more strict. It's $20,000 and not 30, but this is the state requirement. Our threshold for formal when it comes to construction, the state says 500, we say 300,000. So we're still stricter in where we place our limitations. At where you see down here, MWBE goals where you were asking about, well, it says the state doesn't require until 300,000. We require MWBE goals to be set when it comes to construction and repair at $100,000. And so that's just another way we make an effort to ensure that we are including minority and women-owned businesses.
I may have missed something here, but the informal stops at roughly 300,000. Formal picks up at 500,000. What's between there?
Between
300 and 500.
Yeah. You see the top headings of the
yes.
two columns?
They're saying the informal process for the state, it says 30,000 to 300,000. Formal process, anything above. So yes, between 3 and 5, they're still considering it to be an informal process. For us, we're the stricter rule. So at 300,000, it's formal to us.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's formal to us. But I just wanted you to see the state requirements and how we relate and how we put a little bit different stricter rules on it.
Down at the bottom, you've got number of bids required to open, 1 and 3.
Mm-hmm. For construction, at the formal range, we're required to receive 3 bids.
Sometimes we don't get to.
Sometimes we don't. So, but if we don't get 3 bids on that first advertisement, we have to put it back out. Now,
Second time.
if we don't get 3 the second time, we can go with the 1 or 2 that we received. Now, this is a look at our thresholds and what we require, what type of backup and what type of approval that we require from departments when they're purchasing at this level. So for materials, apparatus, and supplies, up to $5,000, we require them to get quotes or justification memo on why they possibly could not get 3 quotes. From $5,000 to $19.99, we're still requiring the quotes and justification memo. The department head has authorization at the $5,000 level, but above from between 5 and 20,000, it's going to require department head, assistant city manager, and purchasing director. And then, of course, at the $20,000 range, we're required to bid it out. So purchasing is taking responsibility at that point. And then over $100,000, we're requiring governing board approval. And it's basically the same for equipment and services as well. Construction, up to the 19, so anywhere $1,000 to $20,000 is going to require a different level of approval when it comes to construction. This is just cheat sheet I like to give them so they know before they process it, before you submit it, this is what I need to see as backup. So how do we buy? So when you see these letters, because I know it varies sometimes in different states, if you're looking at their websites and you see bids, you may see a little bit different lettering, but this is what we use basically. If it's an IFB or invitation for bid or invitation to bid, ITB, or request for bid, they all mean the same thing. We want your bids. So that indicates it's a formal process. They're gonna be sealed bids. We're gonna have a public opening. Detailed specs are gonna be available for it. And, in these bids, we're normally looking for a lump sum amount. And, we're gonna evaluate, each bid for compliance with the bid specifications, making sure that they submitted all the forms that they need to submit for it, and we're gonna award to the lowest responsible bidder. For the RFP process, we typically, do this for services. This is when you just want to look at other criteria outside of just cost, the lowest bidder. And so the RFP process is a longer process. It's typically a longer document, and we're laying out the criteria. The criteria is going to be like a weighted standard, and we typically have in there, unless it's federal funding, we will have a certain percentage dedicated to local and a certain percentage dedicated to minority and women-owned businesses. For RFQ, that can mean one of two things. It can either mean a request for qualifications, or it can mean a request for quote. Two totally different things. So the request for qualification, that's for professional services. So that's going to be your engineers, your surveyors, your architects, and we cannot ask for price in that case. We're basically going to be evaluating them on their qualifications and their competence. Request for quote is a very basic process. It's an informal process, and it can be done over the phone. It can be done by email. You're basically just trying to get quotes, and it's going to fall within that $1,000 to $20,000 range. So standard of award, lowest cost. That's what we're hoping for. That's the but it's not a requirement in some areas. Responsive bid. This is where we are taking in those bids. We are looking at them. We're making sure that the legal requirements are followed. We're making sure that the bid specifications are followed by each bidder. If there's any type of bid bond or performance bond that's required, we're making sure all of that is attached. So by the time it gets to the evaluation team or the project manager, they can feel secure that this is a responsive bid. Now, when they get it, they're going to have to determine if it's a responsible bidder, that if this bidder can actually handle whatever we're requiring. They've got the ability, the skills, and the resources to handle what we're requesting.
If a bidder is not responsive, what happens if they don't?
If they're not responsive, we mark them not responsive, and I let the project manager know, hey, we got 5 bids, only 4 were responsive, not even sending the other.
So the responsible versus responsive. So what if a contractor disagrees with your categorization of them under responsible?
Under responsible, they can protest. We do have a protest procedure. If we say we don't believe that you're responsible bidder and it's for this reasons, then they can protest. And so it would then come back to me to review and say, hey, I still feel that you're not responsible. They can protest it up to the next level, which is the city manager or the county manager.
How often does that happen?
I've only had one since I've been here, and they were okay with my decision. So it didn't go higher than me.
I guess in most cases, it's just not worth it long term, I guess.
So of course, with any process, there are some exceptions. So exceptions to the competitive bidding process, meaning they're not going to have to go through the process that we put them through, the IFB, the RFP, the RFQ, that process. And so sole source, you all have seen that before, because sole source, we require that the governing board approves it. So that means that this vendor is the only vendor that can provide this service, or for uniformity reasons, we are requesting to use this specific vendor. Emergencies, of course, if you got a bridge to go out, something that's going to cause human harm or health danger, then that's an emergency, and then we wouldn't go through the bidding process for it. Gas, fuel, and oil, state does not require us to formally bid it. We're basically bidding it every day. Who's got the cheapest price every day? So even though they don't require it, we're still doing it. We're on the phone and we're calling. Force account work. This is something that I don't think that we use very often, but this is a case where we've got a project that's lower than 500,000 in terms of cost, project costs, and less than 200,000 in labor costs. If we have the workforce to do the project, we can force account work. But, I mean, it has to be permanent employees. That's why I said I don't believe that we haven't used it while I've been here. But that would also require governing board approval in order to do this. State and federal contracts is really very useful to us. The state and the federal government, they go out, they bid these contracts out competitively, and then they get a rate and we're able to use the same rate. Previously bid or piggybacking contracts. This would be typically like other municipal governments. Example would be Forsyth County just bid on an ERP system and they got a particular rate from a vendor.
ERP.
I mean, not ERP. What's the name of their system? It's a computer software that they can use over many different platforms. Like they can put their HR, their finance, enterprise
Integration platform.
Yes.
There it is.
So they just bid on a project and they're in the midst of putting it up. So if the city, if that contract was signed in the last 12 months, if the city wanted to get that same rate for that type of software, we would be able to piggyback on that contract and see if that company would give us the same rate. But it would have to be a contract that was signed in the last 12 months.
And we've done that on some of our specialized vehicles, you know.
We did it in 2010 once too.
What's that?
We did it in 2010.
Okay.
Piggyback.
Okay.
2010. Direct purchases, purchasing from other units of government. If they had something that they were selling and the city wanted to buy it, we would be able to do that. Competitive group purchasing programs, we use this quite often. Competitive purchasing groups are basically, and you all may know them, Omnia Partners is a competitive purchasing group, Sourcewell is a competitive purchasing group, and they're basically coming together typically in a particular market. And they bid out certain things. Like Sourcewell, we get a lot of heavy duty trucks, like pothole marking trucks and refuse trucks. They do that type of thing. Omnia is probably the biggest in the market, and they do a variety of products, but we're able to get a good price from them versus us bidding it out ourselves. And of course, used items, they don't require competitive. So where do they start? So this form was created to make sure that we get all of the information we need from a department when they want to bid out a good, a service, whatever it may be, construction project, because we need to know 3 things. We need to know what it is you want to bid. We need to know the estimated cost so that we can ensure what threshold, what procedure we need to apply. And then we need to know where the funding is coming from, because the process is going to be different if it's a federal state grant versus if it's city funds that we're paying for. And this is how we advertise. I talked about this a little bit earlier. We've got a vendor bid list, but we can also pull from various lists. We've got the MWBE, they have listing, DBE has listing, Hub listings. So we put a list together based on the commodity code and we direct email those folks. And then we go to the city's website. The county has a link that goes to our site. So if you go to the county site and say bid opportunities, it'll come back to the city site. And we also post on the state's website. We do some newspaper ad, but it's very rare. We don't get a lot of feedback. from the newspaper advertisement. So once we got it approved to do electronic advertisement, it was awesome. We could just go to the websites, post ads, and we get a lot of feedback and requests. So this is what our site looks like. If you go to the city's website, vendors can go here to register. They can click here to look at all of the open bids. You can look for purchasing staff here. There's documents also on this side, but if they want to register or pull down a vendor list, you would go click on this vendor registration. And this is just what it looks like. If they go to the bid page, it's a listing of what open bids we have, what department is putting the bid out, and what buyer is the responsible person for the bid, and then the due date, and if there's a pre-bid meeting. And that was a lot of information. This is usually an hour-long presentation, and so that's why I was talking fast. I knew I didn't have the 15 minutes, but are there any questions about the bid process?
Yeah, we've got some of your criteria.
Okay.
Section 5, Exhibit A of today's material. One of the things that can make a difference is the business location.
Yes.
All right, and how knowledgeable typically are our bidders of the scoring system?
Well, we advertise it in the bid. It's in the document. It's in the bid document so that they know how they're going to be evaluated.
For business location, do they need to have a home office?
Yes, they have to. Well, it doesn't have to be like their headquarters.
Yeah.
They just have to have a physical location that they're paying an employee in Winston-Salem or North Carolina, because you get points for either.
And I see that. If somebody, it can be significant, that location to the award.
It can.
Someone who's knowledgeable of this with a bid coming up, could they put a office at that moment in North Carolina, put an employee there so as to enhance their opportunity to win the bid?
They could, but does it?
Hi, I'm Jakira Westbrook. I manage the MWBE program.
Good.
And we're responsible for scoring business location. So there's a key piece in that, as well as having a physical location. A proposer would have to submit evidence that they have paid payroll taxes for at least one employee.
That's good. For how long?
So there's no limitation on how long, but we do actually do our due diligence to ensure that that is physical, that they've paid, that they have confirmation from like the North Carolina Department of Revenue. So we do dig in there and to make sure that they actually have a physical location and it's just not like a shell office.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's the answer. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Very good.
I've got a question, Chantel, and I don't know if this is you or Riccio that Riccio may be able to answer this. So do we pay your department through our indirect cost allocation? Is that how that relationship works?
We do. It's a pass through finance, and so it ultimately rolls up to their operations as well.
Easy over there.
Meaning you want to pay us more now that you know how much?
They are a city.
He's thinking the other way around.
Mr. Parker, we got 3 quotes. They were the cheapest.
Did you get that?
I was gonna say, who's the number 2?
They do a lot of work for us though, that's for sure. We appreciate that.
It is, I mean, it is a lot of work and it's a lot of evaluation and sometimes there's a lot of questions about, how did you evaluate this? And so it's really tough to try to have supporting documentation and so that people's score can be, validated. And I know you go through a lot of conflict for persons that are upset about, especially if they miss it by a few points and somebody else, sees what they were awarded versus what they had. And so it's certainly a tough position to be in.
Or about a few minutes by not getting the proposal in on time.
Right, exactly.
But we are every day getting better. We are working with business inclusion to make sure that we are making documents clear, that, we're making sure that it's competitively fair, and that everybody gets an opportunity.
It's nothing worse than being at a bid opening and you got to have 3 bids and you've already declared the bid period closed and you only have 2 bids and the other guy's standing outside the door going, I got third. You're stuck.
So you mentioned
know.
you also
Yes, I
service the county. Does that include the school system?
Yes.
So you do have a big job.
Just for 7 people, that's a lot.
Yeah, we don't see just a sprinkling of what they do for utilities.
Exactly.
You know,
That's true.
A lot of money. Yep.
what's going on.
Thank you, Chantel.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
This next up is Bill.
So, per Scott in the Yadkin River, nothing really out of the ordinary. We did have 3 storm events throughout the month of January. Rainfall in the lower left is about normal for this time of year. And we're not currently in any type of drought status other than just typical normal rainfall. So this is consumption, or production actually. We were actually up 0.8 MGD from this time last year. In 2022, it's 33.6. This year is 34.4, about a 3% increase. We received 4.1 inches of rain, which is slightly above average, comparing it against the last 15 years. I suspect in January, the reason we're probably a little bit over was due to residual main breaks in the system, probably influenced that number a little bit. We'll go to the next slide. So through January, we've, our water quality labs and operations lab have performed 26,954 analysis. The turbidities at the facilities were slightly above normal. Our max was up just because of cold water. It treats a little bit different. So that's why that number is slightly above the 0.1. And then the average was 0.05, so that's fairly normal. Chlorines were normal. We did have 1 total coliform positive on the inspection sample, which was resampled, and it was the water quality parameters associated with lead and copper. We've done 18. And the number of calls received are slightly up, mainly because of cloudy water and some discolored water. Cloudy water about this time of year is fairly normal. Colder water holds more air, more dissolved oxygen, and as it warms up, it releases it, which can cause bubbles. And a lot of customers call in about that. So I think that's it for the updates.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So far this fiscal year, we've issued 50 water and sewer conveyance agreements totaling a little over $16 million compared to 58 for all of FY22. This next slide shows the breakdown on water and sewer mile. With about 9.5 miles of water mains have been conveyed and 9.8 miles of sewer mains so far this year. Collection system update. We did receive reports for October, November, and December. I don't remember, I wasn't here for December. I don't know what you shared, but November, we received 2 notice deficiencies, no notice violations, and 1 notice of intent to enforce, which we did get a civil penalty for that. We received that this week. I think it was $1,144. December, we got 3 NODs, 1 NOV, and 1 NOI. And for the new members, an NOD is kind of like the lowest level of enforcement. NOV is kind of middle level. Neither one of those require a response to the state, and NOI does.
The situation where all that water went out because the contractor thought they were putting it back into the system and that line was not in use. Is that on the board yet?
I would have to check. I believe that's probably.
It's August, wasn't it?
Was it August?
Yeah.
I have to check to see if that was one of the spills, but usually if it is, and it's due to contractor's negligence, and we have one with North Mill Creek, we assess that fee, we withhold it from their contract. But in that case, that was not their fault, so we would not do that.
So that was an August spill. The one that was in Northwest Boulevard, right? Is that the one you're talking about? And we did get a fine for that.
And how much was that?
I wanna say
Check the notes.
it's in the notes. It's right now.
Oh, John Dean.
Hold on just a second. Let me see. Let me see. There it is. August. $3,141.41. And was that for one spill?
About for two of them.
That's two. So a little over 3,000 for two spills.
The article in the newspaper was saying like 25,000, so.
Up to. We never had one.
Article said 25.
Right.
It didn't say up to.
So
So
let me touch on that real quick. I was gonna get to that in a second. I'll go ahead and catch on. So the last 3 years, really the last 5 years, we've progressively went down in number of SSO counts. So we've had less SSOs than we've ever had. But now there seems to be more interest in the journal as far as these SSO spills. John Deem is focused on environmental and climate change issues. And Gail has worked with John and we've set up meetings, eventually scheduled a meeting, had to reschedule it, sit down and help them understand the process. And there's a handout that HDR has prepared and we put on our website to try to educate him and other customers about, the SSO process.
very good. That's kind of where I was.
It's in front of you, the sewer spills, yeah. Right. But we've done a lot of work in reducing the number of SSOs, as you know, as the commission has supported our funding for. So we just want to make sure that we're educating the public on that. But yeah, so just to answer your question, I think the article did say use 25,000, but it is standard language in the letters that we get from the state say that you can be fined up to 25,000.
Yeah, and that was the thing in that article in the newspaper. It looked like that was it. So I'm glad that y'all were doing some education with the writer of that.
Here's our SSO chart per 100 miles. We're slightly above where we were last year and slightly below where we were in 2021. January was a very tough month for us, as you'll see on the next slide. We had 9 SSOs for the month of January, which is above our 5-year average. You want to go to the next story? 2 of which were related to bypass pump failure. 1 was pipe failure. The other 6 were O&M related. For some reason, if you look at that trend line, January, February of every year, and even April, they're always high months, and we've yet to understand that correlation.
Well, late December is when we had Christmas weekend, had those single digits.
Right.
I would have thought that would have brought.
The cold weather has an impact on the water mains, but not so much on the sewer main.
Oh, okay.
Wet weather has a significant impact on the sewer spill.
What were the pump overs?
They were bypass pump failures. I don't know the details of them, but
Contractors?
I don't know. I don't know the details of them. But I could find out.
There were
What's new.
1 or 2 of them, you say 2 of them?
There were 2 of them, yeah.
If I could add, did a study a few years ago, and we looked at these numbers and we're like, it bothers us. And I checked with DEQ and got similar sized waste treatment plants. And we're below that average median number in the number of spills and the amount of gallons. We're far below that. So I just wanted to bring that up. When we see that, we're kind of horrified just to see we had a SSO. But
Well, we had a presentation at one time where we compared to different agencies. So you could see where we were compared to those other groups, even back then. But given that, we continue to trend less and less. So, I mean, I'm really, that program that we put into place to really reduce that is really paid off. So.
We're at a place where if we increase the cleaning schedule from 18%, 25 a year or something, would it be productive for us to decrease these things?
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely, and that's what you'll see here. You guys approved another cleaning contract back in September. And it took a month and a half, 2 months to get that contract executed and PO issued. And then you had Thanksgiving, Christmas holiday. So that work really ramped up in January. And you can see a big gap between December and January and the mileage that the contractors did. So we're well above that 10% permit requirement. We're still not to that 18% scheduled clean goal. But we think over February, March, we'll get up there fairly quickly. So we have 3 cleaning contracts dedicated to sewer main cleaning. And that is what our consultant has told us we need. That'll change over time as we, more and more sewer lines are conveyed to us that we have to maintain.
Basically on a 5-year turnaround on that.
10-year.
10-year turnaround.
We're trying to clean every single pipe over a 10-year period. Now, some of those pipes have to get cleaned a lot frequently than others.
And we know what that is.
As we find a pipe, it really takes 2 iterations to get a frequency. You might clean a pipe that hasn't ever been cleaned. Go back in 2 years, and if it's still clean, you bump that frequency out a little further. You go back in 2 years and it's dirty, it's, all get out, you're gonna shorten that frequency and clean it a little quicker.
So have we been through everything once?
No, we've been, I think as of, earlier this year, we were at like 58%. What is this number?
You
Is
had a
that
chart
right?
at one time. You have a chart at one time that kind of identified where.
Well, I think we had a chart back in July or August when we issued the CSIP year 7. And we'll have that same chart come year 8. So we're trying to, if you take 10 years, divide it by 10 years, we're on schedule to meet that goal.
Do we need to change the schedule? Do we need to make it 8-year turnaround?
I don't think we do at this point. I mean, what you can tell, majority of our SSOs are O&M related. So the more you clean, the less SSOs in theory you're going to have. So I'm always going to be an advocate to clean more pipe. Historically, we've thought that, when I was at C&M years ago, larger pipes didn't need to be cleaned because they were self-cleaning. They had more volume and they kind of flushed themselves out. And that's not really true. We've been able to defer several capital projects by cleaning larger diameter pipes and removing the sediment from them.
And that's kind of what our program is, to reduce these SSOs. It's a combination of a lot of efforts. Cleaning is absolutely one of them. Clean more pipe, but we've got old pipe that we need to rehab, which we're doing a lot of rehab work. And so we really have to focus in all these different areas to ultimately reach the goal of lowering that number, which we have and we've proven that the program's working because we seem to keep, lower that number. So
One of the recent breaks, had a big race. So do we still deal with a lot of the restaurants in terms of monitoring on their discharge?
Absolutely.
So we see from that effort continuation of the same old problem we've always had, or an improvement? I mean, that's totally different from the cleaning process you're doing here. It's an entirely different look at what's going on at that specific location. So how does that work?
I don't think we have as many issues with restaurants and food establishments as we have apartment complexes and multifamily units.
Where most of the grease is coming out.
Flushable wipes contribute a lot to blockages, absolutely, in conjunction with the grease.
The grease.
so-called flushable wipes.
Yeah.
They're labeled as flushable wipes, but they're not flushable wipes.
So those areas you've identified in terms of, like, going back to more often, so that's not really something that this cleaning program is necessarily. It's a different process that you and your CDN folks have got to deal with.
Well, we do 2 things. We do a lot of outreach. Gail does a great job of going to community events and handing out different educational pieces. In those areas, can the grease, no wipes and pipes, several different things like that. And we also, set up a higher frequency cleaning schedule for those areas.
But could you identify what O&M is?
Yeah, go back to graphs. O&M is fats, oils, and grease, roots, and debris.
And debris is wipes.
Debris could be several things, but
Wipes,
might be
rags.
one of them, rags.
So Mike, I assume we have an overall trade organization that helps us with things. Have they put any type of pressure on these companies that produce the flushable wipes and how they advertise those? I mean, that just seems like a class action lawsuit.
I think there's been several lawsuits. I will tell you this, the last 4 months, I've changed a ton of diapers. We had a new baby.
What kind are you using?
But what I've noticed is every one of those has on there, do not flush, and it has on the package. And I haven't noticed that 4 years ago when we had our other son. So something has changed.
So you've actually had the baby. I mean, you still look pregnant, right? I didn't.
Food baby, real baby.
Oh,
Two different. I missed you, Mr. Griffin.
Well, the big, I guess the bottom line is most apartment complexes just don't have grease traps. Whereas you got commercial that have that just automatically.
Right.
Any other questions for field operations? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ready for me? So we've not done these updates in a few months, but we're seeing some of the same trends that we saw last fall that we reported on. We've taken in 140,886 tons at Haynes Mill Road landfill. So we're tracking a little bit under the budget and obviously behind last year, which is the red line. When you look at it on a monthly basis, you see even though we're in the winter months when we expect to be a little bit lower, we still are below the forecasted budget with a seasonal variation built into it. Still could see a turnaround in the spring. Often waste generation increases in the spring, so we may make that up for the end of the year. Old Salisbury Road, we're also trending below the budget. We've taken in 20,478 tons. You can ignore the red line from last year because you may recall that facility was closed for like almost 4 months, I think. So it's really not relevant for comparison purposes, but still a little bit below the budget at the moment. And this is the construction and demolition landfill, just as a reminder. So that too may pick up in the spring. Finally, we want to remind you about something we talked about in December. We are in negotiations or discussions with our current service provider for the gas rights agreement in Haynes Landfill. We had Steve Gabrielle and Chris Berkemer come here in December. You might recall that proposal that they discussed. So we are still looking at it. We don't have any recommendations for you at this point. We do have SCS engineers assisting us with that review. So they're an outside expert in landfill gas management that'll help us look at that. So stay tuned. We'll bring you more information on that in the future.
So we got an email from somebody unhappy about Old Salisbury, and did we have any updates?
About, not about landfill gas.
No.
About
Groundwater contamination.
The groundwater contamination.
yes, we did. And we responded, actually Gail responded on our behalf and asked them to clarify exactly what they were talking about, where the location is they were concerned about. And we have not heard anything further. And I believe that's a true statement unless someone else has heard it further.
Nothing else.
So is any monitoring data at Old Salisbury Road?
We do monitor that site, yes, twice a
I
year.
assume we looked at that, Jan, and anything unusual that you.
We're in compliance. We are in assessment monitoring for some exceedances of some of the thresholds for certain constituents. But we're in compliance with what the state has asked us to do. Any other?
I have a weird question.
Sure.
My daughter lives in New York, and I read they ship their trash to other states.
They do.
And I mean, will there ever be a landfill alternative? Is there?
In areas,
I mean,
like this.
When we dump our trash, I
where-
mean, will there ever be another way to get rid of our trash other than landfill?
There are waste to energy plants. There's about 80 of them in the United States right now.
They burn
Yes, they burn it and get energy from the heat. That's put off. So there are some, but they're mostly in more populated areas and they are more expensive to operate than.
If I could add, it's where land is very expensive. I think, I can't grasp the number right now, but to manage like waste to energy, it costs you about $125, $140 a ton. That's for your waste. That's your total, how much you net. That's how much it's gonna be. And when we have a landfill cost of here $36 a ton. It's really difficult to find some kind of alternative. You got pyrolysis, you got plasma, you got lots of different things we can use, but they're hugely expensive compared to what we got. And it's because we do it efficiently and we got cheap land.
Balloons.
Yeah, but we have we basically got it's places like New York that
Send it off somewhere.
the disposal costs are just incredibly high. That $125 or $180 a ton, that's okay, we'll do that.
And,
We can't afford to do that when we're doing $36.
and Skip, you bring up a good question that a number of years ago, we actually had a consultant that came in and gave us a presentation on that exact thing. And I guess they're making more strides maybe in Europe, to your point on that. But yeah, it was a pretty good presentation, but that was maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
But the basic thing was, we kind of have the knowledge, but then it comes back to the cost.
To the economics.
Yeah, the
Right.
economics part.
And whether it's feasible on a large scale, there are technologies that work on a small scale for certain waste streams, but you can't necessarily handle all your waste.
So with the wall that's going in at Haynes,
Right?
how far are we now projecting we're good for? What's the latest?
If, after it's built,
Yeah.
2041, although these lower tonnage numbers, you're seeing, if that trend continues, it would be longer than that.
Do you think they're lower tonnage because of competition? People taking trash elsewhere?
Yeah, it's really difficult to say. I think it's that. And there's been a couple of acquisitions where companies were purchased, and I know the company that bought them has taken it out of the county. So it's that, and it's just waste generation could be down. Economic activity might be lower.
Thanks.
I don't know with all of Mike's wipes, since he's putting them in the trash. that might be helping.
I'm doing my part.
Maybe that.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm here to present the financial information for utilities for the month of January. Up here you have the water and wastewater expenditures through January of this year. As you can see, $28.9 million of actuals that have accrued compared to, and that's a higher total compared to last year around this time, around $25 million. Next slide. Still below budget date. Water and wastewater revenues so far this fiscal year, we've accrued about $77.4 million of actuals with that, which is higher than the previous year's actuals amount, which is we're tracking above the budget. This graph also tracks with the information that Bill Brewer shared in relation to the water treatment production numbers. So higher production a lot of times equals more revenue. So I presented this graph a few months ago, presenting the past due balance history associated with our arrears. So as you can see, in the context a few months ago was that we've kind of stagnated when it comes, or kind of stagnated when it comes to these arrear amounts. We did say that we had some plans to address those issues. Unfortunately, the labor market being what it is, we've also had some things that have hurt those plans being, we're carrying several vacancies within our meter services department. Also, we have carrying a vacancy within our customer service as well. But we do plan on continuing to address this moving forward to make it a priority to get those arrears down to pre-COVID numbers. And as you can see, let me just contextualize this a little bit. The dark blue equals pre-pandemic. The gray equals FY 2021, yellow equals last year, and green equals FY 23. So we are better off than we were this time last year, but not back to where we want to be.
So how many people are we actually turning off their water?
That is an excellent question. The answer is that it depends. So with our vacancy, with our operational, we prioritize reads when it comes to our meter reader department or our meter services department. If we don't prioritize reads, we cannot generate bills. If we're experiencing a high number of vacancies within that operation, we have to basically promote and advance the idea of reading above all else. So that deters the number, or puts a damper on the number of cutoffs that we're actually able to do. So it's kind of a game of give and take at any given point. And so just for context, we've been carrying about an average, probably 5 vacancies in meter services since this past October.
So I know based on time, you probably can't fully answer this, and maybe we can have an update later, but I'm wondering, AMI probably would have really helped this situation.
Yeah.
So maybe at some point, if we can get an update on where we stand
Yes.
on that.
Yes.
Off the top of your head, what percentage deployed are we? Just a guess.
Did you hear that question?
Yeah, probably, less than 20%. Still having issues with, supply chain. It's taken about a year to get meters and smart points. We should be taking an item to you all, for full deployment in the next 6 months. We're still working through the gamma phase. I'm wanting to say, and I need to get this exact number, but we're probably around 20 to 25,000 meters installed out of 130,000.
Any issues with any of those?
No, right now it's going really well. I mean, the biggest issue is the labor market and the supply chain.
But that AMI technology would allow you to remotely turn off that meter?
No, not every meter is has a remote shut off. We are deploying the remote shut off meters on specific accounts that we've had historical issues with paying. Because it is a different meter and it's much more expensive.
Next slide, same picture here. Delinquent accounts, we've been hovering around that 12,000, 13,000 number of the last couple months. So, and in the green bars are comparison to previous fiscal years.
And it's the same, I guess it's the same accounts every month. Is that what you're?
If it was delinquent this past month and they have not settled up, it will be delinquent. So this avoids a double counting. Yeah. Solid waste expenditures, same story on this side. Things are more expensive, so we're tracking a little bit higher in terms of the actuals so far this fiscal year is about $4.4 million. Still spending under the budget, but just for context, at the end of the year, that's when we accrue a lot of actuals because of our post-closure processes, which are generally about $1.2 million. Slide and solid waste revenues. This graph also tracks with what Jan presented. When tonnage is down, our revenues are down, ironically enough. $6.3 million compared to last year was around $7.5 million, and less than last fiscal year. Any questions?
Move to the agenda. We'll move to the agenda items now.
As mentioned, as we've done in previous meetings, the goal would be to approve these based on a consent agenda. So just keep that in mind as we go through it.
All right, the first item is the approval of the meeting minutes from December 12th. The December 12th meeting.
Item 2 is consideration of resolution authorizing the execution of various agreements regarding proposed water and sanitary sewer improvements to be installed within various developments. There are 6 developments totaling $548,650 for water, $953,110 for sewer. Any questions on item 2? Okay. Item 3 is a consideration of a resolution awarding a contract for utilities easement maintenance at UFO. The approximate linear footage to be mowed or cleared in the easements is 149,265 linear feet. It's roughly 30 miles of easements. Chantel and her staff issued a request for proposal and received 4 proposals from A1 Forestry Mulching of Reedsville, CCIR LLC of Elizabethtown, North Carolina, Water Construction of Winterville, and Utility Tree Services of Shelby, North Carolina. A1 Forestry Mulching was the highest rated proposal. They're actually our incumbent. They have a clearing contract at UFO for their annual contract. It was determined that although they were the top scoring proposal, they exceeded the available budget. We took their unit costs from their annual contract and applied them to the quantities in this contract and got a budget of roughly $513,000. They exceeded that. I think they came in at $608,000. So we rejected their proposal and went down to the next highest scoring proposal, which was utility tree service out of Shelby at $345,350.70. As part of this contract, terms of the RFP reserve the right for the commission to extend the service for as many as 2 additional 12-month periods. If both parties agree and funds are made available for the purpose. There's also a CPI index adjustment for a total potential contract value of $1,036,052.10 over a 3-year period. Any questions about this item?
Can I go back to the previous item?
Yes.
I think that, I don't know, Aaron's got his laptop up. It may actually have been on what we got the PDF up. But if I look at the last item, which is Brookberry Farm, that map that says property of interest.
Yeah, I saw that too.
I'm not saying.
I was identified.
It was identified in
I
the
think it was
electronic
identified
version that came
electronically.
last week, yeah. But it's not identified.
See, yeah, that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing happened on the current lease.
It didn't print in the book.
Yeah, they just printed for you.
Yeah. This is the one I printed off on the website.
So that came on the website, so it's just like it was there.
That's good catch.
Yeah, we'll check on that with our printer to make sure that whatever issue that is, we'll get it resolved. That's weird, but it is, and it's happened before, and I've had a correction on it. I don't know why it wouldn't show up. It's on the.
Did it show up in the PDF?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just give us permanent red mark.
Yeah, I think they read it. Sorry.
Good catch.
Sometimes if you're drawing on that PDF, and it's not flattened, then sometimes it won't print it. So make sure every time it's flattened, so it just comes.
They got the rest of them. The rest of the items had been delineation, just that one item didn't have.
No, well, there's 2. Look at the current.
First one doesn't have it either.
Yeah.
So item 4 is consideration of a resolution authorizing the execution of an engineering agreement with HDR Engineering, Inc. of the Carolinas for structural assessment of Idle Dam. Idle Dam and Raw pump stations are critical pieces of infrastructure that supply approximately 70% of Winston-Salem water. The original Lowhead Dam was built in 1898 and has not had any significant rehabilitation since it was originally built. That dam is important to maintain an adequate pool to keep our pumps in suction with raw water, to keep our facility in operation. So this project will consist of an evaluation of the existing concrete masonry tail race training wall, which is downstream between where it says it's labeled Yakin River and the main channel of the river. There's a tail race wall, right in there that is showing signs of deterioration as well as the actual dam itself. So this will do the evaluation with respect to rules and guidelines in accordance with North Carolina dam safety regulations. And the intent is to identify deficiencies that need to be corrected. Staff requested statement of qualifications from consulting engineers. We received 3 engineering proposals. HDR Engineering, Inc. of Carolinas was selected. HDR's proposal included 10% MWE participation. So we requested a scope and fee from HDR to provide the structural assessment services for this project. They negotiated a fee of $290,900. And staff believes this fee is reasonable. So staff is recommending approval of an agreement with HDR for the structural assessment of the dam at the amount of $209,900.
So Bill, if I wanted to get a tour, I would just reach out to you.
Yes, and I would.
Is it by kayak?
No swimming. No swimming on it.
Because it said in here it was built in 1898.
Yeah.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, there used to be an old power generation facility that burned down in the 90s. That we have done some rehabilitation on that side of the river, which is on that small portion with the tail race on on that map. Labeled Yakin River, you recall that map, yeah.
I would recommend whenever we do the Nielsen tour, if it's October or whenever, we take a trip over to Idols Road. Because this is a very special place. And if you guys haven't seen this, facility, this is where all of our, not all of our water, this is the main source of water for Forsyth County. And there's a lot of history here, so I think it'd be a pretty, good place for you guys
Yeah, I'd like to see
it.
Have we had any issues with sediment filling back of the dam over time? And have we dredged or dug out any of it?
Yes, that's a very good question. We've currently got a project that's looking, just upstream of that where that old power station was. We have sediment filling in on the right side of the bank that we've got a project that we're clean that out. Go back to that. Yeah, so it's on the upper portion, upstream of where it says the Yakin River on the downstream side.
Right.
You got it.
Right
Here's
there.
down here.
Yeah, that's it right there. Go upstream.
Right here.
There you go, right in there.
Cause the powerhouse was right here, right?
It's actually.
It was the concrete.
It's.
Oh, right here.
That was Freeze, what was it? What was the first name? Built power there and transmitted electricity in Winston-Salem. It was the first electricity that Winston-Salem had, a generator.
Yeah.
And so it was a private, group that, and Freeze was the guy that was behind it. I forgot who else was involved in it. They built that thing. That building was still standing there.
Oh, yeah.
It was amazing.
It looked like something out of Frankenstein's lab.
Yeah, it was strange.
But, this is, the picture on the left is the dam, and, it's a rock masonry dam. It's over 100 years old, and then the picture on the right, you can see the tail race wall. A portion of that has actually collapsed into the river, and then this crack is actually in that wall. So there's still some structural integrity issues that need to be addressed. And part of this evaluation will be looking at that section that has collapsed, because anytime you have a cross current in the river like that, it can cause bank erosion by channeling that water in a certain direction. And we have done some armoring of the bank on the downside on this bank. So we'll need to have that evaluated to decide what the best option is for long-term operation of the facility.
How many dams do we monitor?
Well, we have three what are considered classified as high hazard dams by DEQ. That's the two low water river north of Swan and then Salem Lake Dam. And then we have two low head dams on the Yak, and one is at Swan, and then one is this one here at Isles.
And we regularly, I guess, monitor those, just making sure if there are any deficiencies. We're keeping track of that and putting that into order of work so that we can plan for that budget wise.
Yes, sir, that's correct. It's required more strictly for the high hazard dams, but yeah, we have staff visit the low hazard dams daily.
It's Salem Lake high hazard, low hazard.
High hazard.
And
That's
we-
determined by the amount of damage that we're to.
Downstream.
right. And I don't remember who I was on the commission back in, was it 2012 when we rebuilt Salem Lake?
It was when Thomas was rebuilt.
Yeah. But we had to, we tore down the dam and rebuilt it. And if you were living in Winston-Salem at the time, you might remember that we had to drain the lake, and get in there and rebuild the dam.
I don't think anyone.
Was anybody on the commission when we did that?
Not who's here.
Yeah. Well,
Tom probably remembers it.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
He probably remembers.
I just heard talk about it, that's right.
Design,
It's probably on the. Yeah.
we didn't have architects back in those days.
Wow.
You can do anything, that's right.
All right, okay, any more questions about item 4? Okay, item 5 is consideration of a resolution approving a change order to ethylene iodine for Collinwood RTO and wastewater plant. On May 9th, 2022, The commission approved the resolution authorizing a contract to S&F Polyline for the purchase of Clariflock SC 986 at the Archie Ellis wastewater treatment plant for the term of that contract from July 1, 2022 to June 30, 2023. So a purchase order was issued for $362,601.89. We've executed one change order for $52,411.52 at the city manager's authority. Staff has calculated based on current usage that 7 additional loads estimated at $403,000 will be required. Meet the demand through the end of fiscal year 2022-23. The staff recommends approval of the change order for $441,000 to cover the necessary charges against the purchase order 36,381 for Clariflock Block SE 986. Polymer to the end of fiscal 2022-23 year. Once approved, the total amount of this purchase order will be $856,013.41.
So Bill, I hate to point out a spelling error, but that's the kind of guy I am. One spot you have Clariflock and another you have Calriflock. Anyway, I think probably that last one on the fourth to last line. But what is that? What does that do? Why do we need that?
It's used at the dryer to create the pellets.
Okay, but that's a polymer that allows us to
Create the pellets that we use for our solar panel.
All right, I don't understand, how, why is it so much more than what we?
That's a very good question. I
I just don't-
was waiting for someone to ask. This contract that we left, and we were basically converting all of our contracts to 6 months. And the numbers that were set up were for 6 months. They were estimated for 6 months, not realizing this was an annual contract. This is one of the only ones that is still on an annual basis.
So it's just an oversight.
It was just a clarification. And we will correct that. That's a very good question.
I couldn't figure if it was that or,
Well, my concern.
I knew we
was
didn't
that-
totally underestimate.
Yeah, but my concern was that something was out of whack that we were feeding too much, and I investigated that. We were right on track based on years past consumption, so.
Feel better.
So we got clarity on the Clariflock.
Yes.
Price of Clariflock.
You gotta have a little humor when you're working, keep it fun.
So consideration, item 6 is consideration of a resolution awarding a purchase order to Avivo USA LLC for 3 new digester mixers for the Archie Ellis wastewater plant. So the Archie Ellis plant has 6 digesters. The primary purpose is to break down solid waste. Each digester has 4 Onco IMEX RTD mixers manufactured by Avivo and distributed by EWP Environmental. These mixers are a critical component in the treatment process. And Ellis is experiencing an increasing amount of struvite crystal accumulation in these mixers, transformers, and other equipment around the plant. These mixers also have a very long lead time. So when they go out, it can be several months before they can either be repaired or replaced based on the evaluation that our maintenance staff does. So EW2 is a Winston-Salem County Utility Commission sole source vendor that was approved on May 9th. The cost of these mixers is above the amount approved at $75,000. So it requires approval for this specific item. The staff has obtained quotes from the 3 different mixture models located at Ellis for $373,000 and request approval to purchase these spare mixers. So do we have any question about this item? Courtney has a picture of the actual digesters. The mixers, each digester has 3 mixers around the perimeter and then 1 in the center. The reason we're asking for 3 spares is because 2 of the digesters have a different model mixer in the center than the other 4. So it just, The design is slightly different and it would require some modifications to put one mixer in all of them, so it's just easier to.
So the two centers that are different
Yeah.
are not the same. So you got three different center mixers, three different kinds of center.
Right.
mixers.
That's it, two different center mixers. The perimeter mixers on all 6 models are the same. 4 of the 6 have one model center mixer and 2 have a different model.
This is like why we try to standardize, but in this situation, it didn't work out. that way.
There's a redundancy ratio for the one.
The issue.
But if we're getting the, redundant models for the center mixers, they're, already getting some, for those that are 4 out of 6. If the ones that are sort of the odd man out, if those just kind of put out, could we just replace those center mixers with the ones that we purchased for redundancy so that we sort of standardize over time? And then when we are trying to have some redundancy, we can then have 1 to 6 instead of 1 to 4 and 1 to 2.
We could, there would be additional costs to make that happen because it would require modification of that actual mixer and the mouse. And it may even require that the lid be removed, which, and then you're talking about a clean out. So it kind of snowballs on you.
Yeah. It's kind of like trying to replace a Ford transmission in a Toyota.
So you're stuck with the scenario you've got, and you just gotta keep going.
Yes.
You think?
Can we, so from a labor standpoint, can we put those new ones in-house?
Yes. Our staff does that. They pull them and then they can drop the new one in, get it operational. And then typically what they do is they tear the one that's been removed down, determine whether or not they can repair it from spare parts inventory or needs to be sent off or needs to be replaced.
That's good. So I just know, me personally, in my business, I've got backup pumps for each one of my septic pumps that I need, especially if they're a different brand. Do we, I mean, it seems to me like this is a good thing and that we should probably be doing it across the board with a lot of our supplies, having those backups. Now, granted, if you don't need, a pump or whatever, doesn't go out for another 15 years, you certainly don't want to have one sitting on the shelf for that long. If it's a 1-to-1, but if it's multiple, like you were talking about, I mean, are we kind of going through? I mean, it seems like that would be an efficient thing to do.
We do.
Yeah, the wastewater side does. We have what I would consider to be an extensive pump inventory. And Courtney's seen the purchase orders that have come through. When they take and pull the pump that's failed, we typically have one on the shelf for them to put in, and then they repair or replace the one that's been removed.
And then we go at that.
And we'll get another one at that point.
At that point.
If we need to, or we'll repair the one that's.
Because and I just bring this up in the case of our 4 brothers up in Flint, Michigan. I think they had another pump failure or something, and they're waiting on the pump, and they're having a boil water advisory, and they're just not having the.
Yeah, there is a design element to this too. So when we design facilities, we design on a firm capacity. So what that means is, if your largest pumping unit out of service, you still have pumping capacity for the design of that facility. So that's an element of redundancy that's kind of built into the operation of the plant. But the point you bring up is an excellent one in the regard that you have to have spares, because if you have that largest unit out, it needs to be replaced, because really at that point, if something else fails, you're going to be below your rated capacity.
Right. And with lead times right now, I mean, we just can't. That's one of the reasons why this got brought to our attention, is because we just can't.
It's an
we can't take that risk. Yeah.
And Courtney's put up some pictures of what struvite actually is. It's just for the commission's benefit. It's a crystalline mineral deposit. It's common in wastewater plants in the U.S. and around the world. It's often temperature and pH dependent. and it's formed when magnesium, ammonia, and phosphate are present in equal proportions. And it clogs pumps, mixers, pipes, and it requires increased maintenance, cleaning, obviously. The picture on the upper right is the struvite crystals in one of our mixers. So you can imagine with those large mixers, the imbalances that are created on the shafts of these things. And the one on the lower left is inside the house. And that's where the damage to the equipment occurs. It causes unequal wear on bearings and rotating parts of the equipment.
So there's not a polymer you can find that will mitigate that.
We're researching what we can do because it's becoming a problem, but, yeah.
Very good, very good.
Do we have any more questions on item 6?
No.
Item 7 is consideration of a resolution awarding purchase order to PBS Technologies, Inc. for ferric chloride at the wastewater plants. So this is a very familiar story due to current volatility in chemical markets and conditions, price escalations in raw materials, to produce more chemicals, etc. PBS Technologies was the previous supplier for this chemical, and they decided not to renew, so we put it out to bid. Those were received on January 26, 2023 for ferric chloride as needed for wastewater treatment. We asked for 6-month and 12-month pricing. So staff recommends awarding a purchase order to PBS Technologies. And an estimated 100 dry tons of ferric chloride and the estimated total amount of $124,400. This is for the 6-month term because the pricing was slightly better. So term to the bid will allow 1 6-month renewal based on the price. Producer price index is reported on the U.S. Department of Labor Bureau Statistics website at the time of the extension. However, PBS Technologies took exception to our renewal terms as they did last time, which precipitated this rebid. So probably at the end of this contract, we will probably be rebidding this item.
In 6 months, right?
Yeah. The staff recommends approval of the 6-month contract for PBS Technologies for $124,000.
Two things. Struck me as odd that PBS was charging a premium for a 12-month contract instead of 6. You'd think it would go the other way. Did they give a reason for that? Did they just kind of slap an additional $10,000 on it?
They,
It was going up.
But they're trying to project a year out, not knowing. And they say that they buy their allocation 12 months in advance.
Right.
Obviously a 6-month contract, they feel a little bit more comfortable.
And on the resolution, should it say the estimated 6-month? No.
Oh, does it still say 12?
It says annual, so I don't know if that means that's the amount allocated to spend within a year, or if it means,
Oh. That's a good point. So that personnel therefore be resolved in the estimated annual amount.
Should be 6 months.
I guess we can just add that into the meeting minutes.
Amend it.
All right, next item.
We're ready for number 8. Item number 8 is a resolution accepting the extended franchise to operate Winston Road landfill. And I think we have some background information on why. The original franchise was issued in the year 2000, so it's about 23 years old. It would have expired in 2030 had it not been extended. As a part of the permit amendment process, where we've been seeking the approval to build this MSE berm that you see in the picture, we were requested by the state to amend the franchise prior to its expiration date of 2030. The city council did that in November. November 1st was the first reading of this ordinance, and we held a public hearing, and no one showed up with any comments for or against. There was a second reading on November 14th, and it was approved on that day. So staff recommends that you accept the terms and conditions from this, franchise.
Could I ask a technical question, Marlena, maybe? Since Charles noted this change that we need to make to 6 months, do we need to pull item 7 out and vote on that separately? Or can we do the consent agenda with that change as noted?
Just looking at that, I think I would do that out of an abundance of caution.
Pull it out
pull it out
separately
and then
and
amend it and then vote on it. Yeah.
All right, I guess we need a motion to pull that from the consent agenda.
motion.
Second.
All right, so item number 7, I think it was.
Yes. Yeah.
Removed from the consent agenda. Is there anything to vote?
Commissioner Brown? Commissioner Eustache? Commissioner Griffin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hines?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones? Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Commissioner McRae?
Yes.
Commissioner Parker?
Three.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Younger?
Yes. Now that that is passed, let me say that I've been on some other boards where you didn't have to vote on taking something out of the consent agenda.
Yeah, right. So what I'd like to do now, I guess, get a consent on items 1 through 6 and 8.
So moved. Second.
Been moved to second. I guess a roll call.
Commissioner Brown?
Approved.
Commissioner Griffin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hines?
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Commissioner McRae?
Yes.
Commissioner Parker?
Approved.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Younger?
Yes.
Beth, did you see Mr. Eustache has joined us?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see him there either. Hey, Harold.
Hey, sorry about that. I was stuck in court.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So you get his.
Yes, by the way, on the resolution.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
All right, very good. So the next item we have before us is item number 7 with modifications. Yes, and the now therefore will be it resolved, modifying annual to 6 months. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes.
I move that we modify number 7 to show that it's a 6-month contract and not 12 months. Before we already done it.
I think you
Second.
can make the motion.
Oh, okay. Charles, fire away.
Move to revise the resolution in item 7 to reflect that it's a 6-month contract, not annual. And for 1/24/400.
All right. Second. All right, roll call. Is it clear where we are? Everybody on the same thing?
Yeah.
All right.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Eustache?
Yes.
Commissioner Griffin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hines? Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Commissioner McRae?
Yes.
Commissioner Parker?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Younger?
Yes.
All right, very good. That's approved. At this point, I guess is that we're to the point of any good order. Anybody have anything else we need to bring before the commission? Nothing? No, it's not here. So is there, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Day.
Mr. Day. Oh, sorry, Mr. Day.
Here's Harold.
Move to it.
All right. Like a reading second, all in favor, I'll go roll call.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Eustache?
Yes.
Commissioner Griffin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hines? Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Commissioner McRae?
Yes.
Commissioner Parker?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Younger?
Yes.
I think I got it, yeah. All right, very good. It's approved. We are adjourned.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Photos up here.
I need to talk to-
Historic photos. You're welcome.